A very good morning. We are coming to you live from Nasrec in Johannesburg at the G20 summit. With us in studio, we have Tinashe Mpasiri, who is from the 1873 network. A very good morning to you, Tinashe.
Good morning, Anissa, and good morning to the viewers. Thank you for having me on your platform today.
Thank you for joining us. Firstly, before we start, can you just explain what the network is about and what the rationale behind the name is?
Thank you. So, the 1873 Network is a member based association of forward leaning individuals who believe that the connected individual, the equipped individual, has got a better opportunity or better chance to access opportunity in life to inspire new thinking, new outcomes, and new possibilities. So, if we're just to look at individuals, whether it's South Africa, whether it's any other African country, most of the time we tend to operate in silos. Whereas when we come together, we are able to come up with solutions to the human challenges that we face. So the rationale behind the name 1873, most of the time we give names that are even divisive. When one says I'm a Catholic, I'm a Protestant, already that is divisive. But when you look at the power of numbers, numbers connect people. So if you just to look at 1873 in itself as a year on the African continent, it was a point in time when Africa was borderless. The borders that we've come to know of were demarcated in 1884 at the Berlin Conference. Then looking at the numbers themselves, if you were to look at the numbers, the first two numbers, 1 plus 8 gives you 9. 7 plus 3, it gives you 10. The difference between the two numbers, it's 1. And from 9 to 10, it's an ascending 1. So if you ask yourself as an individual, what is the power of 1? The power of 1 is that the number 1 is it's indivisible. So when you just look at a human being and the human spirit is indivisible. So, and when we look at most of the time when we speak about the Africa we want, as far as a change in whether it's in a community, it takes the individual. The individual is the driver of that change, and hence the rationale behind the name the 1873 Network.
So you speak about a borderless Africa and how it existed at this point in time in history.
Yes.
Can you just take us through that vision, forward looking into the current state and what that actually means?
So now looking at the current state, because we have had so many conversations, there are actually many conversations that happen in different forums as far as the issue of borders are concerned in Africa. We've had individuals like the president of economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, saying we need to do away with borders. Then it's not the only individual who states that. There are many other individuals who also state that, who have this vision of a borderless Africa. But the borders that they will be speaking about are physical borders.
Okay.
Whereas when you look at the 1873 network, our philosophy is a borderless mindset.
Okay.
The physical borders that are already there, there's nothing that we can do about them. Human beings by nature are territorial. Even if to go to your house, there's a wall that is around your house. Would you break down your wall? No. Even your room, you lock it. You deny other people access. That's what human beings are by nature. But if we're to looking at the progressive mind or the progressive individual, the borders that we need to deal with are a mindset border. That's what we need to collapse.
So basically, going back to the words of Steve Biko, who says that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
Absolutely.
Basically, that's what you're saying. And I'm quite interested when you say that it's not the physical borders and it's more of the mindset. What does that mean with what we currently seeing? South Africans complaining about a porous borders surrounding South Africa with influx of people from neighboring countries coming in, whether illegally or not, and movements such as Operation Dudula. What is your take on such, given what you've spoken about?
So looking at that perspective alone, the people of South Africa, as far as complaining about porous borders, they're very correct, because there is a challenge. as far as these borders are concerned,
Yep.
especially if people can actually be able to go through a border post
Yeah.
without the relevant documentation, like a passport,
Yeah.
to get into South Africa. It's a matter of concern.
Yeah.
Because the borders that we have, the physical borders, they are for control, they're for access. So when we look at just the aspect of rule of law, the borders that we have, the physical borders, they are also part of that aspect of the rule of law.
Yeah.
So people ought to be people who are abide by the law.
Yeah.
They can't operate outside the four corners of the law.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I look at Operation Dudula, the sentiments around migrants, particularly illegal migrants, I think it's a conversation that each one of us ought to actually have.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the very same individuals that are crossing into different countries illegally, we actually know them. They are within our communities. And the very same people who work at this border post who ought to be exercising authority as far as denying access to people without relevant documentation, they also are people within our communities. So you find out that we all have a duty to play to ensure that people respect the constitution of that particular republic.
Yeah, I wanted to actually touch on the issue of the morality, but I think I'll just leave that for now. Access to health facilities, for argument's sake, and that being a right as championed by the United Nations, for argument's sake. But I think that's a different discussion. What would you say the actions of people who cross into a country illegally, what would you say it does to the agenda that you're pushing for a psychological borderless Africa? Yes, the borders remain physically, because like you said, humans are territorial, countries are territorial. There's the issue of access and control that needs to be maintained. What do those actions do for an agenda that you're pushing? Because where we are right now, on a global stage, your G20s, your BRICS, your African unions, it's very important for us to find unity amongst ourselves financially, economically, socially, and the likes. What does illegality do to such an agenda like the one that you guys are pushing?
So if you just look at the animal kingdom, there are no rules. Animals just behave in any manner they like. But whereas for us human beings, that's why we have the rule of law. We ought to respect the rule of law and also have regard for property rights. So when people cross into a country illegally, they are behaving like animals. And imagine just a person who doesn't have any form of documentation. How are you able to tell who they are?
Yeah.
You can't tell who they are.
Yeah.
And it derails this vision of a borderless mindset, in the sense that a person without a form of identity, they can easily involve themselves in crime.
Yeah.
And how will you be able to trace where that person stays? You can't be able to trace them, because what we want is a situation where people live in harmony and knowing that Anissa stays there, Tinashe stays there, and you can be able to track where that particular person stays.
Yeah.
So it derails this vision of a borderless mindset where Africa is a progressive Africa, because the very individuals who tend to enter countries through illegal means. Of course, there's some who don't involve themselves in illegal activities, but at the end of the day, if they are caught by police, let's say coming from work, what are they going to do? They're probably going to bribe the police so that they let them go, and they end up so that they're left alone, and they are left to do whatever activity they're doing. But when you bribe an officer of law, it corrupts the whole system in itself. It's a small seed that you're planting that grows into a bigger seed. Right now, the issue of corruption, it's a critical issue in South Africa and the rest of the continent, and not just the continent, throughout the world. The same challenge that South Africa is facing, US also faces it. As far as porous borders are concerned, I've seen a documentary where someone crosses from Mexico into South Africa, into the United States of America, and in an hour they are already given a fake ID that they can use within the borders of United States of America. So you can imagine what one can actually do with false documents and can get away with. That can actually cause so much problems within a society, like the issue that I've just raised, the issue of crime alone. So illegality tends to promote things that are inconsistent with the constitution of that particular country's that particular republic.
Yeah. Let's shift our focus now to the good stories that Africa has to tell, whether individually or the power of togetherness.
Yes.
Unpack that. Tell me how that looks as it stands.
So if we just to look at problems that we face as human beings, I always say that you want to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And you cannot solve a problem alone. An idea is not an idea unless it's shared with other individuals. So coming together, we come together because of problems. Right now, we are at the global G20 summit taking place in Nazareth. It's countries that have come together to address issues that face human beings on a global scale. So South Africa cannot be an island. It needs America. It needs China. It needs Russia. If you just to look at the trade between America and South Africa, American companies in South Africa, they contribute to 10% of South Africa's GDP. And if you to look at the United States of America, South Africa is actually the biggest trading partner of US on the African continent. There's a saying that I also use a lot: the talents I do not possess or gifts that I do not possess, I do not regret. I surround myself with such. When our minds meet on a problem, we can be able to come up with a sustainable solution to that particular problem, and we can all live in harmony when we come together.
Do you think that the African Union has done justice in representing the African agenda? Do you think there's been deliverables, tangible deliverables that translate to the common person on the ground across their member states?
Well, you pose a very fundamental question as far as the role of the AU. I actually believe that the AU in itself, it is a platform where such conversations take place.
Yeah.
And when those conversations take place, of course, we have heads of state attending such forums and tabling such issues. And it's so unfortunate that as citizens, we often look towards these heads of state to become the problem solvers. Imagine a president like President Ramaphosa, who's got two eyes, he's got 2 ears, 1 mouth, just like you and me. And we expect in his mind to problems of 60 plus million people to reside is in mind. President Ramaphosa can't do that alone. It requires also active citizen. Myself as a citizen in the community that I happen to be, I ought to be the driver of the change that I want to see. Ask not what your government can do for you, but what you can do for yourself and your community in the name of your government. So the problems that we face in our communities, it is us, the people who reside in these communities, that are able to solve them. These are just platforms to amplify the challenges that we face in our communities. Otherwise, there's also a saying that states charity begins at home. So it is at the family level that these problems can actually start to be solved. So when I am home, the issue of corruption, I always say that sometimes my brother could be the one driving a car at a speed above what is regulated. And when he's stopped by the cops, what does he do? He pulls out good money. I should be the first one to say, not in my name. President Ramaphosa is not there when that happens. So it is up to us citizens to be the drivers, to be the engineers, to be the builders of the change that we want to see in our communities, so that we can secure the kind of order that we desire.
Yeah. No, beautiful words there, Tinashe. Just as a parting shot, what message do you have to give on what you do? What's your final
Well,
words.
my final words to each and every one out there. You are the driver of the change that you want to see. It starts with you, and it starts with me. And together, when our minds meet on the Africa we want, we are able to secure that Africa. And what is that Africa that I want for myself? It's a diverse Africa. It's an inclusive Africa. It's a progressive Africa. It's a prosperous Africa underpinned by justice under rule of law.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, Tinashe. I think we've learned a lot about your vision. Thank you so much for joining
And
us.
thank you, Anissa, and thank you for providing this platform so that my voice could be heard on the Africa that I want, the Africa that we want collectively.
No, most definitely that voice was heard. That was Tinashe Mpasiri from the 1873 network talking to us about everything Africa, everything borderless Africa, and not necessarily the physical borders, but the psychological and mindset borders. He has reminded us where you ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country and community. Thank you so much.